Good evening. This is Ashish, your host for the evening, and welcome to another session of Sahaja Online. And it's been a while since we have met. It's been a busy time with COVID and everything that's been happening. So I had a fairly long hiatus from conducting some of these sessions, but hopefully moving forward uh, would be would be possible to at least twice a month or so conduct these sessions, and then let's see how it goes from there. Maybe more frequently. So again, this evening we have Mariana. You know her very well, and let's get started. We thought it would be interesting to have this month maybe two sessions on the brain, uh, and how it relates to and how is it important within the context of the practice of meditation. We have had a generally a bend of medical inclined or medically inclined topics, to make it somewhat more different or maybe interesting for those who may be interested in these kinds of things. So we have, as a topic, we have the human brain and meditation. This will be in two parts. So today we will cover part of it, and then uh, a fortnight from now we will cover the second part of it. So today we will try to see what is the relevance of the brain as an organ for meditative practices, and what exactly is the brain, what does it do, and how does it do it. And not that we have answers to most of these questions, but at least we'll set the stage for what the brain is and our sort of basic very understanding of of its functions. Then we will, of course, have our meditation session, which is the most important part, which is why we gather. We don't really gather here for a theoretical exercise. Next time around, when we meet, we will try to take a look at some of the research that has been done through fMRI, that is functional MRI studies of Sahaj meditation on the human brain. And that would be very interesting as well. But that's for the next time. That's about 2 weeks from now. So let's get started. Mariana, if we could have the next slide. You're all familiar with the subtle system. I wanted to start off with that. You're familiar that we have three energy channels within us. We have the seven energy centers. Those of you who have been attending some of these sessions in the summer and early fall of last year, or through the summer of last year, we had gone through each of these energy centers, starting from the first energy center right up through the limbic system. All the seven energy centers were something that we had covered. We had looked at their anatomical correlations. We had seen as to how they integrate within the construct of spirituality and the construct of meditative practices. That on the left side we have the power of our desire, which is our passive side. On the right side we have the power of our action, and in the center we have what we call as the power of our evolution, or the power that enables our ascent. Fundamental to this understanding is the energy that resides within the triangular bone, which is called the Kundalini energy, and we have seen animations of it, as we will see now after some time, as to how it rises through the six energy centers, which correspond to energy centers, sort of, or centers within the parasympathetic nervous system, and then ultimately rises through the seventh energy center at the crown of our head, and that establishes a state of uh, thoughtless awareness within us. Also enables us to feel what we call as vibrations or a sensation on the tips of our fingers. We went through all of that through the summer of last year, and today we'll try to see what role the brain plays in all of this. So let's go to the next slide. So, what exactly is the brain? Now, there's a beautiful quote by Emily Dickinson. She wrote about this over a century ago, that the brain is wider than the sky, and put them side by side, the other will contain with ease, and you beside. And she was very prescient and very uh, almost prophetic about about what the brain actually comprises, and what it means to study the brain. So I just enumerated some fun facts about the brain on the right hand side. We can go through that, but fundamentally The brain consists of multiple lobes. It is situated in this cavity we call the cranium, which is the skull, and it has a number of anatomical parts. It's got the frontal lobe, which enables some of the functions that make us literally human. It has got the temporal lobe, the parietal lobes, occipital lobes at the back of the head, so on and so forth. And then if you take a section of the brain, you can see some of the structures inside. uh, it's an extremely complex organ, mostly made up of fat, mostly made up of water, sorry, fat and protein. Comprises about just 2% of the body weight, but consumes about 20% of our total energy. So it's a very energy hungry, energy demanding sort of an organ within the body. Even the heart or the lungs or the liver, which are also vital organs, do not consume as much energy. So it's a very demanding kind of an organ, but it is the quality and the quantity of it that make it truly special. So if we look at it in terms of proportional weight, although it is just 2%, there are animals within the animal kingdom whom relative to the body weight, the brain is actually larger. For example, elephants, their brain is much larger, not just in size, but also relative to their body weight. But it does not mean that it's a superior being. So it is something about the human brain that makes it very superior because of the way it all comes together, and we are still trying to figure it out. So neuroscience is dedicated to this proposition, and we are still trying to uh, entangle truly what it all means. The funny thing about the brain is that of all the organs in the body, or much like many of the organs in the body, it is sitting in this brain sorry it is sitting in this cavity called the cranium. And in that sense, it is totally detached from the rest of the world. It does not come into contact with any external environment, so to speak, right? And yet it is the one that interprets reality for us. So we will see that in some of the subsequent slides, what we mean by that. But this construct is fundamental to understanding the role of brain in human spirituality, that the brain itself is not attached to the reality outside. It sits in its own world, sort of inside the skull, and yet it is responsible for telling us what our reality is. And that's a paradox of neuroscience, of cognitive sciences, that sometimes we cannot wrap our head around, but that's just how it is. It is mathematically or computationally an organ of supreme wonder. It's made up of 85 billion approximately neurons, or the nerve cells, so to speak. And it has got an equal number of supporting cells called as glial cells. So that's what the brain actually is. It's literally 85 billion nerve cells. At one point, we thought there were like 100 billion, but that's like 85 billion. And as those of you who might be interested in computational mathematics, the amount of work this thing does is in just a few minutes apparently is more than what the Hubble Space Telescope has managed over the past 30 years. That is the processing speed that it possesses. And just 1 cubic millimeter of this tissue, the cortical tissue, can hold about 2000 terabytes of information. And the total capacity of the brain of a single human brain is supposed to be about 200 exabytes of information, which essentially would mean all the digital content currently in existence could be uh, could be captured by the computational capacity or by the storage capacity of the human brain. So the brain in that sense is like a cosmos captured within our cranium. It is enormous, it is huge, it is fantastic, and yet it is this densely packed matter that is part of the human body. It's a true wonder of evolution. So let's go to the next slide. So what does it do? As I said, that it estimates reality through cognitive or non-cognitive processing of information, and it literally makes us who we are. And this is also very important to our understanding of how the brain is important. So let's take a minute or two to understand. Let's say let's take the sense of sight. right? If you can see on the right hand side, there are various parts of the brain that correspond to various functions: thinking, emotion, speaking on the left hand side, which is basically the front of the brain. Or if you take about speech and understanding, which kind of forms on the lateral sides, or on the sides of the brain. Balance and regulation, if you take a look at the on the other side, which is the cerebellum, which is responsible for it. Vision, which is on the occipital side, which is the back of the brain. So these are various functions that we are involved with, that make us human, right? Thinking, acting, emoting, uh, responding to stimuli, processing information, therefore that enables us to be literally function as normal human beings. Walk, run, talks, listen, make eye contact, process the information around us. All of that is done by this one organ. Now let's take a look, for example, at the function of sight. Now, when we look up, we look at the sky and we see that the sky is blue in color, assuming there are no clouds. You're in the beautiful sunny kind of an area. So the sky actually, it's not like the brain is some kind of a window that opens up and sees a blue sky. What is actually happening is that component of the infrared spectrum that is captured through the eye and is processed by the optic nerve that sends the signals back into this part of the brain, actually interprets that color as blue. So it is not like we see up there and that the sky is blue. In reality, there is no such thing as blue. In reality, what is happening is that the eye, the way it is structured and the chemistry that occurs because of the rays of light that go through our pupil, fall on the retina, trigger a reaction. That reaction is taken all the way back to the back of our brain. That's how it interprets it as being blue. Let's take another example. Let's take the example of taste. So say, for example, I give you a spoon of honey, right? Now the atoms and molecules that make up honey are themselves not sweet, right? But the moment I put them on my tongue, a chemical reaction takes place, and that is transmitted into my brain at the center of taste, as you can see there. And that, based on my prior experiences over a lifetime, that is interpreted as being sweet. So the atoms and molecules of honey don't come with a label sweet. It is the interpretation of that sensation that make it seem sweet to me. Likewise, if you hear a melody, you say you hear Beethoven, you hear Mozart, you hear anything that you like, that you have heard that before, that kind of is interpreted through your ears, it goes into the brain, and then the brain interprets it. So, in other words, it truly makes us who we are. It makes us appreciate the Mona Lisa. It makes us appreciate the Last Judgment. If you go to the Sistine Chapel, it also makes us appreciate some of the other things that we do not wish to talk about. But in reality, the brain tells us who we are. And in doing all of this, in itself, it remains completely detached in and of itself. It does not take part by itself by in any of these reactions, if you will. In reality, also the brain does not have any touch sensation, which is why neurosurgeons can actually perform surgery on the brain while the patient is literally fully awake, because there are no pain receptors within the brain itself. Within the matrix of the brain, there are no pain receptors. So in literally, it is the very definition of a detached organ, and yet it makes us who we are. Let's go to the next slide. So what we see is now, just to understand how does it do it. So how does the brain actually function or make it work? So there is a beautiful quote by David Eagleman, who is a neuroscientist, is an author. So it says that a typical neuron makes about 10,000 connections to neighboring neurons. Remember, there are 85 billion neurons. So 85 billion times 10,000. This means that in a single cubic centimeter of brain tissue, there are as many connections as there are stars in the Milky Way galaxy. So literally, if you see the neuron, which is on the left hand side, you can see a bulbous body in the center. It has got a tail like extension, and then you can see these kind of smaller filaments that go out. I've tried to tease that out in the next illustration on the in the middle. So you have the cell body, you have the axon, and the most important are the dendrites. You can see this tree like structure, and that is what we are talking about. So a single neuron makes about 10,000 connections, and thereby it forms what is called as a neural network. So literally the brain functions as a network, and this is very close to the concept of collectivity, the concept of collective consciousness, that we are who we are at a spiritual level, not as individuals, but parts of a whole. So the brain, in a way, from a spiritual point of view, perfectly captures that construct that is so close to explaining how Sahaj meditation actually works at a collective level. So just as the neurons in the brain connect to each other and together they form a network which is vastly complex, vastly almost indecipherable for us for now with the tools that we have, and yet make human life possible, human consciousness possible. So likewise, we believe that the function of the Kundalini energy within us is when it rises through our parasympathetic nervous system, and when it actually arrives through and it enlightens the limbic system, which is the next slide, and we have spoken about this in one of our previous talks. So let's go to the next slide. So we look at the limbic system. These are structures within the middle of our brain, and when it sort of triggers the limbic system, it allows us to have that feeling that we are part and parcel of a larger reality, that our individual reality is a very limited sense of who we are in terms of the absolute sense of the collective reality. And that can only be possible, that only happens when the Kundalini energy, this energy that resides within us, comes up and it triggers what you see as the limbic system within the core of the brain, or literally within the middle of the brain. So we put it all together now. So the brain, which is seated like literally a mini cosmos within our cranium, in itself totally detached, and yet interpreting every impulse that comes in, allowing us to be who we are, interpreting every sensation, every impulse, whether it is through the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, or every other system in the body, our hands, our limbs, etc., etc., everything that is coordinated in this super duper computer that nature has bequeathed to us, ultimately functions not as an individual cell, not as an individual, but through this vast interconnected network of networks. And that is how the brain plays a very important role, not just, of course, in our existence. That one doesn't even have to make that point, but that is how it correlates with our spiritual existence. That we are not individuals, but we are part of a larger network. And that realization only happens when we get our self realization, when we realize that we are not an individual, but we are part of a larger network, that our consciousness is not just individual consciousness, but that it is part of a larger collective consciousness. And that happens when we get our self realization, or when the Kundalini energy comes up and pierces through the limbic system and sort of what we call awakens it. So with that, we will stop. What we will do now is, of course, we'll see a couple of videos as to what the affirmations are, and we will get into the meditation state. I hope that provided a little bit of an explanation of how the brain works, but more important, how it correlates with our spiritual life and how critical it is to our spiritual life. Next time when we meet, we'll go through some of the research that actually demonstrates through functional MRI how the brains of Sahaj, those who have practiced Sahaj meditation, differ from those who have not. So there is some radiologic evidence that seems to suggest that meditation actually induces changes in some of the structures that you see in front of you if you practice it long enough. So this is not just theoretical, but also something that is potentially measurable. So I'll stop there, and over to you, Mariana, to play the videos, and then we'll get into a state of meditation. Thank you.
So first we will play a short video where you will see the steps that we will follow when we have our guided meditation in a moment. So you don't have to try to figure out what it is that we are doing. We will see it in the video.
To begin, sit comfortably on a chair or on the ground with your back straight and your hands on your lap, palms up. Close your eyes and relax. Then repeat each of the following affirmations until you feel peaceful and ready to move on. Ideally, you'll spend about 30 seconds on each of the affirmations, saying them slowly, genuinely feeling the desire and meaning they represent. First, place your right palm over your heart and quietly say, either to yourself or aloud, "Am I the Spirit?" Next, place your right palm on your lower left side, just above your hip, and say, "I want to have pure knowledge." Move your right palm up until it's just below your ribcage and say, "I am my own master." Place your right palm over your heart and say, "I am the Spirit." Place your right palm on your left shoulder where it meets your neck and say, "I am not guilty." In this moment, it's important to leave behind any regrets or feelings of guilt you've been holding on to throughout your life. Place your right palm across your forehead, lower your head slightly, and say, "I forgive everyone, including myself." In this moment, you must forgive, forget, and let go of painful events that have troubled you in the past. Finally, put your right palm on the crown of your head, with the center of your palm maintaining firm contact with your head. Now, rotate your hand slowly in a clockwise direction, and as you rotate your hand, say, "Please let me have my self-realization." Sit quietly for approximately 5 to 10 minutes, without trying, without effort. Notice the silence. Notice how your thoughts have calmed. If a thought does pop into your mind, simply let it rise and fall away. Should you find it difficult to raise your inner energy alone, help is always available on this website.
Now we can all together follow the video that you will see of raising the energy. And if you are here for the first time and you find it difficult, don't worry if you somehow miss something. It's not so important to do it exactly properly as it is to have the right intention, but for everybody else, we can do it all together.
Sit comfortably on a chair and relax. You may close Sit comfortably on perform the gesture of time. Sit comfortably on a chair and relax. You may close your eyes if it helps you to relax and focus. Now, focus your attention on the top of your head. The goal is to raise your inner energy to the crown of your head and tie it up. As the energy rises up your spine, it will gradually shift your consciousness into the state of thoughtless awareness. To raise your inner energy, first place your left hand in front of your lower abdomen with your palm facing your body. Then slowly raise your left hand to the top of your head, and as your left hand is ascending, rotate your right hand around it in a clockwise direction, swirling around and around until both hands are above your head. Now, Imagine that you are tying a knot with a short rope, and using both hands, perform the gesture of tying a knot above your head, as if you were actually tying up your inner energy. Now, lower both hands, and starting with your left palm facing your lower abdomen, repeat this process of raising the energy and tying the knot 3 times. The second time, tying 2 knots at the top of your head. The third time, tying 3 knots at the top of your head. This technique will help focus your attention and raise your inner energy to the crown chakra or energy center. The goal is to raise the energy, achieve a connection to the universal cosmic energy through your crown energy center, and establish the state of meditation. Now, you want to form a shield of protection to protect your subtle energy system and to preserve your ability to remain in the state of thoughtless awareness. First, place your left hand on your lap, palm upwards. Next, place your right hand beside your left hip. Slowly raise your right hand over your head and sweep it down the right side of your upper body. Then sweep your right hand back up the right side of your body, over your head, and down the left side of your body. Repeat sweeping your right hand up over your head and down 7 times to form a shield.
Great. Let's get started. So let us place both our palms in our laps, palms facing upwards and eyes closed. Most of you have been meditating for a while. For those of you who have joined us very recently, let's close our eyes. Just take a couple of deep breaths. Hold it. Let it go just to relax. Let us place our right hand on the heart. And let us ask this question: am I the spirit? Let's ask that 3 times. Very quietly, am I the spirit? Let the attention settle inside your heart. Let it be drawn within. Now let us place our hand on the upper part of our abdomen, right hand. Left hand, as always, stays in our lap. We ask a question 3 times. Am I my own master? Am I my own master? Now let's put our hand further down on the left side at the level of lower abdomen or at our waist level. On the left side, press it gently with our fingers. As you know, the energy rises through the center, but we work through the power of our desire on the left side. So now for the second energy center, Swadhishthan Chakra or the Aortic Plexus, we say, I want to experience pure knowledge. Let's say that 6 times, very quietly. I want to experience pure knowledge. Now let us raise our hand again, upper part of the abdomen, always on the left side, just below the last rib. And this time we say the affirmation for the third energy center, and that is, I am my own master. It's not a question this time, but an assertion. Let's say that about 10 times, very quietly. Don't have to count, just very quietly. Say it once and watch the silence develop within us. I am my own master. Now let us raise our attention. We bring it into our heart again. Now for the fourth energy center, we say the affirmation. I am my own spirit. It's an extremely important affirmation. We need to say it slowly, calmly, and internalize it. That internalization is very important. Say it once and feel the silence. The words don't matter. It's just the feeling of it that matters more, the experience of it. I am the pure spirit. Let us now place our hand at the angle of our neck and shoulder on the left side. Turn our head slightly to the right side. We say the affirmation, I do not condemn myself, for the fifth energy center. I do not condemn myself. Say that a few times. Let us raise our hand, place it across our forehead. Just bend our head forward just a bit. Once again, an extremely important affirmation for the sixth energy center. I forgive everyone, including myself. But let's bend our head forward just a little bit. I forgive everyone, including myself. And finally, let us place our hand, the flat of our palm, the center of our palm, on the crown of our head. Again, keep our hand bent forward, splay the fingers out, put a little bit of pressure on the crown, start rotating it in a clockwise fashion. If we can keep our attention at that point, remember what we just discussed. Kundalini energy passes through the limbic system, enlightens it, and that gives us that sense of self-realization, that we are part of a bigger entity, our true self. So let's move in a clockwise fashion and say 7 times, I want to experience my self-realization. Just bring our hand down. We keep our eyes closed. We'll continue to breathe normally and try to keep our attention on the crown of our head. We'll try to meditate in complete silence. If a thought intrudes and you feel that you are getting into a state of thinking, just say, I forgive, and try to get the attention back on the crown of our head. The real meditation begins now. Slowly open her eyes. If you have any questions about today's session, please type them in the chat box, or we'll be happy to answer them to the best of our ability. Hope you felt the silence within. You felt the cool breeze. For those of you who are trying for the first time, you can put your hand on top of your head. You may be able to feel a cool breeze. If it's not, it's fine too. There's a question here that says, how does the Kundalini affect the limbic system? So it's a great question. It's probably the primordial question. So the exact biochemical or the physical nature of it, of course, is unknown. But by touching the limbic system, or by awakening sort of the limbic system, it makes us aware of our true self. So the limbic system is considered part of the Paleocortex. So it is present in not just mammals, but also in lower animals, so to speak. So even vertebrates of a lower strata. So say, for example, reptiles, or animals that belong to that phylum or that part of the organic, of the evolutionary scale. And it is very uh, it's very basic in the sense it just gives you a sense of yourself. And that is why the limbic system is so important to the functioning of every organism. It's very vegetative. So many of these organs that you see in that slide in front of you are responsible for our respiration, emotion, memory. uh, so the limbic system does all of these functions. It's made up of multiple, the hippocampus, the amygdala, which is responsible for our affect. Hippocampus, part of that is responsible for memories. So the limbic system is a very old system, or very in our evolutionary scale, and it is covered on top by the neocortex, which is the cerebral hemisphere. So the limbic system, when it is awakened, when it is sort of triggered, it realizes, sorry, not, it makes us realize who our true self is. It gives us that sense of self, because otherwise we go through our daily lives with our thoughts or our emotions. But when the limbic system is awakened, what happens is, awakened not, so it's awakened in every being, from snakes that crawl on the ground to us humans. So it exists, but it is not awakened. When the Kundalini energy awakens it, what happens is that it gives us that sense that when we put our hand on our heart, for example, and we say, I am the spirit, it gives you that sense of spirituality, that I have an existence that goes beyond my physical sense, that beyond my physical senses, my emotional senses, my thoughts, my actions, my deeds, but that I am something innate and eternal. And that's what happens when you when the limbic system is triggered by the Kundalini. I hope, Susan, that helped helped answer your question. It's a wonderful question. I believe it is being recorded, right, Mariana?
Yes, we're recording it and we will make it available.
Any other question that we may help to answer? All right. Looks like we don't have any more questions. And so with that, we will conclude this evening's session. And we will meet again in a fortnight. What we are then going to take a look at is, between groups of people who have been meditating using Sahaj technique versus those who have not, does the brain look any different when you look at it from a functional MRI point of view? So that would happen in 2 weeks from now. and we really look forward to meeting you then. So in the meanwhile, do visit Sahaj Online, the website. There are other sessions that you can attend, and most important, do continue to meditate every day. So with that, we bid you good evening. Please stay safe, and see you in about a fortnight's time. Bye bye.